Greetings to all, and welcome to the Jamaica Diaspora Show. My name is Mark Millward of the West Indian Social Club of Hartford, and I'm your host. The Jamaica Diaspora Show is aimed at providing viewers with coverage of diaspora news and activities in a variety of areas, including business, arts, health, education, entertainment, politics, immigration, trade, and investment. Our first show featured an exclusive interview with the Most Honorable Andrew P. Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, who talked about the Economic Growth Council and harnessing the power of the diaspora. Tune in for more coverage in the future on the activities of the Economic Growth Council and diaspora engagement. Hartford, Connecticut is the third largest population of Jamaicans in the United States, behind Miami and New York. We intend to provide our viewing audience with global diaspora perspectives and coverage from the US, UK, Canada, Jamaica, and of course the Caribbean. Please join us weekly, Saturdays at 2 p.m. and Sundays at 3 p.m. on Hartford Public Access Television, providing global television network coverage at www.hpa-tv.org. Greetings. Welcome to the Jamaica Diaspora Show. My special guest is the Honorable Luke Bronin, Mayor of the City of Hartford. Welcome to the Jamaica Diaspora Show.
Thanks. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and we are so pleased to have you. Mayor, I wanted to first talk a little bit about your background.
Sure.
To give our viewers that this is an international audience. Can you tell us where you were born, where you're from?
Sure. I was originally from New York. Was born in Port Chester, New York. Grew up in Westchester County for a while, and then Fairfield County, Connecticut, and then New Haven, and then Hartford, and a few stops in between.
Okay. And your education?
I went to college and law school at Yale, so that's what brought me to New Haven, and then was in grad school in between those two, and then my wife and I moved up to Hartford right after that. She teaches over at UConn Law School, so that's what brought us up to Hartford about a dozen years ago.
All right, now, what was your undergraduate degree in?
Philosophy.
Philosophy?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's a BA, right?
It was a BA in philosophy.
Okay, yeah. That's interesting. Now, what led you to a law career?
I'd always been interested in public policy, and I never really thought that I wanted to be a lawyer, but getting that law degree was a great foundation to be able to get involved in trying to work towards public policy change. And I've been lucky since law school to have the chance to spend most of the time since law school working on in different roles in government and working on public policy issues that I'm passionate about.
Well, okay, that's very interesting. Now, you have a military background. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So I joined the Navy Reserve as an intelligence officer after law school. Actually, it was in 2007 when I was commissioned, and I at first started looking around because I had a lot of friends who had served in the military and had done at the time, one or two deployments overseas, either in Iraq or Afghanistan. But where I was in law school, it was just a different world. Most people weren't thinking about that, and it just seemed to me that the burden was being really narrowly shared by a very small group of people. So I started looking for different ways to serve, and found a program called the Direct Commissioning Program for intelligence officers in the Navy, and did that. And I ended up serving in Afghanistan in part of 2010, part of 2011, and was over there. Got pulled over onto the anti-corruption task force over there. But the rest of my time was reserve.
So, well, during that experience in Afghanistan, can you reflect on that? I mean, what kind of impact did that have
Well, you know, look, we were, as I said, we were on the anti-corruption task force, and I can't say that we really solved that problem. But it was, you know, it was a great experience and a fascinating experience. You know, we've been in Afghanistan for a long time now, and I think one of the things that, you know, that experience really showed me is that we really have not had a political strategy over there, and I think so much of our military strategy has been about creating room for a political strategy to work, but we never really had the political strategy behind that, and so it was, you know, in that way disheartening, but on the other hand, incredible to be part of a team of just people dedicated to service, who love our country and who want to do good in the world, and you know, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Now, you were an officer. What rank were you?
Lieutenant.
Lieutenant?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was over there, I was Lieutenant JG.
All right.
Lieutenant junior grade.
So is that like a lieutenant colonel?
That's like a captain in the Army.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's quite interesting. And I think a lot of people were not aware of your experience in Afghanistan or in the Navy. So I wanted to bring that out. Okay. Can you talk about, you did have some time and experience in Washington. Can you talk
Sure.
about that?
Yeah, so in the early days of the Obama administration, I was able to join that administration at the U.S. Treasury Department. So I served right from those early months in the wake of the financial crisis. So a lot of what we were trying to do was work to respond to the financial crisis and work towards reform, you know, Wall Street and reform and consumer financial protection. Worked a lot on what became the Dodd-Frank Act that set up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that Donald Trump is now trying to dismantle, but that's done some really important work in trying to protect you know, families across the country who've been you know, targeted for predatory lending and things like that. And then for the second half, I actually ran an office called the Office of Terrorist Financing and Financial Crimes, which is focused on internationally on trying to cut off the flow of funds to terrorist groups, trying to target you know, international organized crime and make it harder for them to access the international financial system. And then at the time, a lot of it was about trying to turn up the heat on Iran to try to get them to the negotiating table. So you know, full 4 years, except for the time that I was deployed, and it was a tremendous experience.
So from there, you went to the governor's office.
Right. Yeah. Then Sarah and I, you know, came back up to Connecticut. We had 2 little kids at the time. We now have 3, but we came back up, and I served for 2 years as the chief legal counsel to the governor. And you know, in that role, had the chance to work on a lot of policy issues, from the common sense gun laws that were enacted after the terrible tragedy at Sandy Hook, to criminal justice reform, what became known as the Second Chance Society laws, working to try to push the state to become one of the first in the country to end chronic homelessness for veterans, and on a lot of environmental initiatives as well. So that was a great experience too. But you know, as you know, 3 years ago, I decided to leave that to run for mayor because you know, I think we have such an incredible city, and I think the city was at a crossroads, and I was frustrated by some of the decisions that were being made, so decided to step up and run.
Well, we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about the experience that you had in joining with the West Indian community, the West Indian Social Club. But we're going to take a break right now.
Sounds good.
Okay.
What are you here for today?
We're here for school. Learn.
And what else? To get your eyes
Fit.
E. Okay, how about there? F. G. You have some good eyes, my friend. All right.
Good eyesight is an important part of overall well-being and for kids' learning.
Straight ahead. The t-shirt or okay, just look at that for me.
Children who cannot see well are often branded as inattentive or disruptive. Without the proper intervention, this can become a barrier to their educational success and subsequently detrimental to their overall development. Many kids in Jamaican schools simply do not have the means to get regular vision screenings for the early detection and treatment of sight-related defects. Cornerstone Jamaica, in partnership with Mission of Sight and the Rotary Club of Negril, have started to remedy this problem with the See Better, Learn Better program. This program aims to transform lives, one vision screening at a time, providing corrective eyewear and, in some cases, eye surgery. We are proud of the work we've done so far, but there's so much left to do. To join us in our mission, please message us at cornerstonejamaica.org.
And we're back with Mayor Luke Bronin, Mayor of the City of Hartford. And Mayor, you have received a significant amount of support from the West Indian community, from the African American community. City residents, through their tax dollars, foot the bill for city services that are enjoyed by residents living outside the city. In fairness to the city residents, should those that utilize city services be paying something into that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Look, that's a great question. You know, one of the things that I've really tried to do over the last couple of years is just make the rest of the state and the region aware of all the things that the City of Hartford does for the region and for the state. You know, whether that's being home to state government and having all those state government buildings that are non-taxable, whether it's being home to all the social service agencies that serve some of our most vulnerable residents, not just of Hartford, but of the region of the state. Whether it's, you know, being home to the sewage treatment plant and the trash to energy plant that serve many, many other communities, you know, or it's the hospitals and colleges. And so all of that property pays no taxes. It performs a hugely important role in the state, but it pays no taxes. And so one of the things I've really tried to do is get out and raise awareness of that and make the point that, you know, if you want Hartford to be strong and successful, then we've got to recognize that we've got to build a structure that works. You know, you can't run a city on the tax base of a suburb. And, you know, over the years, the city raised taxes higher and higher, but raised them to the point that I think it's just not sustainable or competitive. And so that's why I tried to draw a line in the sand and say, you know, we're not going to raise that property tax rate. We're going to fight for a fairer relationship between the city and the state.
So, but how do you address this issue with the situation where the external suburbs, you know, the cities outside of the greater Hartford area are utilizing the services? How do you solve that problem?
Well, it's by making sure that the city gets fairly compensated for it. So the city's got you know, again, half its property non-taxable, and from the city's standpoint, it doesn't really matter to me whether the hospitals are paying us directly or whether the state is reimbursing us fairly. And so what we've fought is for that fair reimbursement. And, you know, we were able just a couple of months ago to get an agreement signed with the state, which comes a little bit closer to doing that, you know, where the state it's a new partnership where the state has taken responsibility for making payments on some of the debt that had built up over the years before I became mayor. And that gets us a little bit closer to a, you know, more fair and appropriate compensation or reimbursement for the role that we play. So that's one way to do it, but I think it's continuing to fight and to advocate for a relationship between the city and the state that's fair and that recognizes all that the city does for the state and for the region. And of course, all that we do, it's more than just being home to all that non-taxable property. This is the largest job center in the state. You know, there's a bigger private sector payroll coming out of Hartford than any other community in the state, and the vast majority of folks who are working in Hartford live outside of Hartford. And so that's one more reason why, you know, we really are all in this together, and that's why we've been arguing so hard that if we want to be competitive and strong as a state, we've got to make sure that we're reimbursing the city of Hartford and making it possible to run the city and to deliver those basic services that our residents deserve and that, you know, all of our employers need as well.
Now that this reference that you were talking, are you referring to this $500 million bailout? Is that the reference that you were making here?
That's right. I mean, I don't like the term bailout because, you know, to me, it's really about building a structure that can work. You know, when you've got a city that has barely more taxable property than some of the small suburbs nearby, you know, that are 1/5 the size, it's just not built to work. And so to me, it's about building a partnership that actually makes it possible to have a city that's stable. And that can deliver those basic services, and that can be that strong heart of this region that we need the capital city to be. But that's exactly right. It's that agreement on which the state agrees to pay that service, and that's over a period of many years, 20 to 30 years. And so I expect that'll end up costing the state in the neighborhood of about $40 million a year. And to put that, you know, in perspective, if the state was fully funding its what's called the pilot formula, payments in lieu of taxes for all those non-taxable properties we have, it would actually cost the state far more than that.
Well, okay. So then my next question gets to some more specific areas.
Sure.
Where what solutions are in place in improving the school system in the greater Hartford area?
Well, you know, this is, you know, one of the most important questions, and one of the things that we know we have to do is build stronger neighborhood schools. In Hartford, you know, we operate under a court settlement, a court decision called Sheff versus O'Neill, which was a desegregation decision, and I think it was a really well-intended you know, lawsuit, but the solution has had some unintended consequences. You've ended up building a lot of schools, magnet schools, and some of them are great schools, but what's happened is we've kind of overbuilt schools, and a lot of our neighborhood schools got hollowed out, and that's meant that our Board of Education has had to make some really hard decisions about what the future of the Hartford school system looks like, and they've had to consolidate and close a few schools so that they can focus on, you know, a smaller number of stronger neighborhood schools. You know, and I support the superintendent in that effort. You know, the superintendent and the board went through a long process of community engagement, and there were really hard decisions. But I think that they are focused on the right thing, which is trying to make sure that we've got a smaller number of stronger neighborhood schools, and I'm going to continue to support the superintendent and the board in that effort. But the much bigger thing is, look, we've got to be honest about the fact that just like a lot of things in Connecticut, you know, everything is governed by those town lines. You know, we've got a state of 3.5 million people, and we've got 169 towns, and every service is, you know, duplicated in each one of those towns. And I think that the truth is we have deep disparities in our communities. We have tremendous economic and socioeconomic disparities, you know, in just a 5 or 10 mile radius. And so long as that's true, you've got such an intense concentration of poverty, and you have such segregated communities. I think we're going to have to continue to work to get, you know, appropriate levels of support and funding, because when you've got districts where need is concentrated, you need to dedicate more resources to educating kids in that city, in those neighborhoods, with the kind of opportunities, and give them the kind of opportunities that they deserve.
Well, my next question is specific to the African American community, and in reference to a forum that was conducted by Senator McClory that pointed out some of the disparities in treatment for African Americans in this community. Are you aware of that forum, and what are you doing to address that?
Well, you know, this state has one of the largest achievement gaps in the entire country. If you look at the educational attainment and performance in our communities that are primarily black and brown versus some of our wealthier suburbs that are primarily white, those disparities are shocking and unacceptable. And there's a lot of things that go into that. Again, I think it comes back to, first and foremost, putting resources where the need is greatest. And there was a lawsuit this past year where there was a Superior Court judge who said that the state's funding formula for education was unconstitutional because it didn't make any sense. It was irrational. It wasn't putting resources where they were needed most. It was merely a political formula. The Supreme Court overturned that decision, unfortunately, but I hope that legislators will take to heart some of the things that judge said about the need to really reform our educational funding in this state.
Well, when we're talking about medical disparities specific to this community, how do you intend to address that?
Did you say medical?
Medical.
Well, look, that all of our challenges in a lot of ways are tied together, and they often come back to the need to promote economic opportunity, because so many of these challenges, whether it's on education or healthcare, the disparities are tied in with poverty. And so we'll continue to work with our local providers, with our hospitals that are here, with the insurance companies that are helping to support some programs that help to improve health outcomes, with our local community health centers, federally qualified health centers. And we need to continue to partner with them. They're doing some really good work. But again, in a lot of ways, it comes back to this same challenge, which is raising awareness of those disparities and trying to raise the consciousness of an entire state so that folks recognize that we all have a stake in making sure that there aren't communities where children are growing up with such incredible and entrenched disparities.
Well, okay. So the focus here in this discussion right now is the economic development, really, of and the well-being and the health of the community. So when we talk about economic community development, there are a number of initiatives that have been ongoing. For example, and I wanted to point this one out because a couple of years ago, the Jamaican ambassador to the United States it was Ralph Thomas at the time. We have a different ambassador now, but he paid a visit to Hartford, and the discussion was around direct flights from Hartford to Jamaica.
Yeah.
And you were aware of that?
I was, and I'm a strong supporter of it. I mean, I think that this city and this region is home to one of the largest, West Indian and Jamaican communities in the entire country, and so I think we ought to be looking at the economic opportunities that come with that. There are direct flights down to San Juan.
Sure.
I think they're very successful. I think you could have very successful direct flights down to Jamaica as well, and that would be great not just for people and tourism and promoting travel back and forth for individuals, but for commerce as well, and creating and deepening those economic ties. I'd love to see our city emerge as sort of the hub for trade between New England or the East Coast and the Caribbean.
Yeah, and I'm making these references specifically because this is the Jamaica Diaspora show,
right,
and this is specific to this audience. So and I did want to mention an article that was in the Hartford Business Journal. The article was called "Caribbean Connections: Jamaica Eyes Nonstop Flights," where you made some comments in reference to what you just offered in terms of the enormous opportunity that we have here to take these, in your words, to take these cultural assets that we have and turn it into an economic asset for the city. So we had an opportunity to develop a industrial park. What happened to that? Where are we going with that?
I don't know that there really was a specific kind of well-developed opportunity on an industrial park specifically. I mean, I would love to be able to do something like that, and I'd love to work with anybody who's got an idea that sort of got the financing and the plan to do it. I would love to do that. I think it's also about working with the Connecticut Airport Authority and seeing whether there's a way to get those flights coming in. Okay. I think it would also be useful, and here's something that I'll do coming out of this, is to reach out to some of the more well-established companies that are out there. I mean, there are some, whether it's Grace Foods, for example, but others that are already doing some of that trade, and see what we can do to partner with them to make them make them think of Hartford as the hub. Okay.
Well, in a recent interview with the president of the West Indian Social Club, Richard Gordon, who you know,
sure.
He talked about mobilizing the community.
Yeah.
For activism, for political activism. And I believe that was one of the items on his agenda to address that going forward. So I guess I would just say that this is a heads up. That,
I think that's great. I think that's great. Okay. I mean, look, efforts like that are always so much more powerful and so much more effective when there's a community rallying behind them. That the Jamaican community in Hartford is going to have far more connections and relationships and ideas about how we can deepen commerce between Hartford and the Hartford area and Jamaica than we'll have on our own. So we're all ears, and I hope that happens, because I think it would make it a lot more easy to succeed.
And just as a follow-on to that, are you aware of the bill that was passed by Congressman Elliot Engel, the H.R. 4939? Caribbean Strategic Engagement Act.
Yes.
that encourages the relationship between the U.S. Can you comment on that?
Well, I support it. I mean, I don't know every detail about that bill. My understanding of it was generally promoting and supporting engagement between the U.S. and the Caribbean. So I certainly support that sentiment. I don't know whether there's anything specific that's been sort of put behind that, but absolutely think that it's something that would be great for us as a community, and great for Jamaica and the other islands, and also just good for the U.S.
Okay. Well, let me take a brief break,
sure.
And we'll come right back.
Sounds good.
Okay. We'll be right back with Mayor Luke Bronin on the Jamaica Diaspora Show.
Many of us fail to consider what is a fulfilled life. Over time, I've come to realize that a fulfilled life has three component parts. Number one, doing well. Number two, doing good for society. And number three, living a life of passion. Doing well is having enough wealth so that you can live the lifestyle that you choose, and having excess wealth that you can give back to society. Which brings us to doing good. We have to ask ourselves the question, what is our responsibility? We were born in countries that made us confident. We're born to parents who had values. And thirdly, we're born in an era that gave us opportunities. Conversely, there are many children who were born in countries that immediately truncated their confidence, who were born to parents who immediately, by virtue of having no values, no standards, expectations, truncated their confidence, and who were born in an era in which there were misfits. Therefore, we have to ask ourselves the question, do we have a responsibility to those of our brothers and sisters who are less blessed than we are? And finally, the third component is passion. Very successful people, very fulfilled people, they have a mission, they have a purpose that gets them through the air pockets of life. So the question we all have to ask is, what is my purpose? What is my mission? What is my cause? That is what gives you passion. Living a life of fulfillment, the concept is simple, not easy to execute over the long run. We have to be prepared to persevere through thick and thin. Ultimately, living a fulfilled life leads to one's legacy. Which reminds me of the story of the three stonemasons. This passerby, having seen these three stonemasons working day and night building this wall, decided one day to stop and ask the question, "Stonemasons, why are you here?" Stonemason number one, his response was, "I need a salary." Stonemason number two responded by saying, "I am the consummate professional." Stonemason number three said, "The real reason I'm here is because I'm building my cathedral." Now, who do you think will have the fulfilled life? Stonemason number three, every brick he lays, he makes a direct connection to his ultimate legacy. Our behavior today will be our history tomorrow. Make sure it's well written.
And we're back on the Jamaica Diaspora Show with my special guest, the Mayor of Hartford, Luke Bronin. Mr. Mayor, the next question that I have is regarding the financial benefit of that has, well, what has been the financial benefit in establishing this baseball park that has been such a controversial issue?
Yeah. Well, look, as you know, I didn't support the park when it was proposed, mostly because financially I didn't think it ever made sense. And so I'm not sure I can tell you that it has a financial benefit directly. I mean, the city is going to be paying more in debt service than we get in revenue on that ballpark for a long, long time. That said, you know, when I inherited it, it was a mess, and we had to do a lot to try to get it back on track, and firing the developer that should never have been chosen in the first place, and trying to get an insurance company to step up and pay for it so that the taxpayers of Hartford wouldn't have to pay for it. And we were able to get it done. And as much as I think it was not the right thing to do financially, it's been a huge success from a attendance standpoint. It's brought a lot of people into the city, and I think that's a great thing, and we should embrace it. You know, the more people we can get in to rediscover the city, and the more opportunities for affordable entertainment that we can give our residents, that's great. And so I think it's been a thing that both the community and the region can kind of rally around, and hopefully it starts changing the way people think about Hartford. I think for a lot of families, they hadn't really thought about Hartford as the place that they were going to take their family for, you know, a day of entertainment on a Friday night or a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and that's changing because of that. So I think in that way it's really important. And now we're really going to focus on trying to get those lots around the baseball park developed. It's been complicated because, unfortunately, my predecessor gave the development rights to those lots to the same developer that you know, was responsible for building the ballpark, and so we had to fire them from the ballpark and terminate that contract. But we just put out an RFP, and we've got a very credible developer who responded to it. And so, you know, we're going to work with them, and you know, we're not going to rush into anything. We're going to make sure that it's a deal that makes sense for the city and for our community. But we are going to try to get that development done, because that's the key to making it work financially over the longer term.
For making the ballpark, you're
right. Because, you know, the way it was always sold was that the taxes from the development would pay for the cost of paying down that debt to build the stadium. And so the development itself is key to being able to generate that revenue.
So where are we at right now as far as generating revenue? We're
very little. I mean, we get some revenue from the parking. You know, we get some revenue from the team in the form of rent. But it's not a deal I would have done. But it's a deal we have to live with, and you know, we got to play the hand that we're dealt. But the key really is over the longer term, and it's going to take years getting those lots developed.
Okay. So then my next question is, as far as an agenda for economic growth for the city and to attract businesses, what's being done there?
Well, so the first thing was we had to get stability. You know, we didn't talk much about it, but when I came in, our city was in a full-blown fiscal crisis, full-blown budget crisis, and it had been coming for years. But the first key to being able to attract investment is being able to demonstrate to investors that you've got stable foundation to build on. And so, so long as we can maintain that partnership that we've built with the state, I think we now have that stability. And now it's about trying to really promote growth. And you know, we saw just a couple of weeks ago a big international company, Infosys, announced that it's setting up an innovation center in Hartford. They're going to grow 1,000 jobs, and they're going to be training those workers, in partnership with local educational institutions. So it's about trying to promote local talent. So there's stuff on that level, kind of the big scale, and then on the smaller scale, we're moving forward with projects like the Albany Avenue streetscape that had been delayed and delayed and delayed for almost 2 decades, and so that's underway now. And hopefully that helps to create a better environment for our small businesses, for example, along the Albany Avenue corridor to succeed and to grow. And we're trying that same thing in neighborhoods throughout the city. In other ways, whether it's through building Weaver High School again, or getting old, dilapidated housing projects like Westbrook Village or Bowles Park redeveloped into modern, affordable housing, and trying to get some commercial development there as well. All that's about trying to create the stability and the strength in our neighborhoods that can help to support those small businesses that's along our avenues. So we're going to continue to push not just on getting investors to and employers to come back into the downtown, but also in our neighborhoods. It's something that's always been really important.
Okay. Now there was the state of Connecticut has a lean program, and you're familiar with that lean Six Sigma.
Yep.
Now, what has it flowed down to the municipal level? What are you applying this, because it's the one of the primary business strategies that United Technologies utilizes it. All the insurance companies utilize it.
So we haven't had lean or Six Sigma black belts like yourself coming in and working with us directly, but we have been doing a lot of process improvement and trying to figure out how we can upgrade our process so that it's more efficient. Sometimes that runs into challenges with union contracts, and we try to work through that. Sometimes it's about making sure we're using technology better. We've got, in a lot of ways, real antiquated technology, and as you know, that can be a big part of making your processes more efficient. But it also takes money to be able to acquire that new technology, and so it's trying to prioritize that and make sure that we're looking for opportunities to do what we do better, because we know we're going to have to constantly be looking for more savings and more efficiency, and try to do that without compromising the services that we're providing to our residents.
Okay. I had another question on your future. What are you planning? At one point, you had done an exploratory committee to run for governor. What's your immediate plans now?
My immediate plan is to keep focusing on the city of Hartford. I love this job, and I love the city, and we're making some really good progress. And one of the reasons that I explored the run for governor is that it really matters to our city who's in that governor's seat. And whether we've got a governor who's a partner and a legislature that's a partner with us. And so I'm going to work this year to try to make sure we get a governor in there who is a good partner to us, and try to partner closely with whoever that is. But I'm going to continue to focus on making sure we maintain the fiscal stability that we fought so hard to get over the last couple of years, and maintain the momentum on sort of economic development, both in the downtown and our neighborhoods, because that's what's going to make the difference and decide if we can turn some stability into real long-term strength and real opportunity for the residents who live in our city.
Well, Mayor, thank you very much for coming on to the Jamaica Diaspora Show. As you said, the population here of Jamaicans and Caribbean people, it's the third largest in the United States, behind New York and Miami. And so this is good information for the diaspora, and we appreciate it.
I appreciate it, and unlike our president down in Washington, we know here that our communities are strengthened by immigration, not weakened by it. And so,
in fact, there was a question that I did have with regards to that. Hartford, Connecticut is a sanctuary city.
That's right.
And can you speak to that?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, this is, first of all, Donald Trump, is constantly misleading people about what a sanctuary city is. And to me, the most important thing is First, just saying we're a city that understands what I just said, that, you know, that we're strengthened by immigration. That's always been true in Hartford. You know, generation after generation, wave after wave of immigrants, whether it's from, you know, Ireland or Italy or Poland or from Puerto Rico or Jamaica or any of the other West Indian islands, or from, you know, refugees from Bosnia and, you know, Albania, or go on and on. We're strengthened by every one of those waves of immigration, and there's no question that so much of our strength now comes from our very strong West Indian community. So that's the first thing. It just starts with recognizing that immigration is important and makes us better. The second thing is saying we're not going to use our local police force to enforce immigration laws, and we're not going to deny any child, you know, the ability to get an education or to go to our public library because of their immigration status. That's immaterial to me. If they're a resident of Hartford, then we're going to work to try to make sure that they can be, you know, as they can use and develop their talents to the fullest, and be as strong and contributing a member of our community as possible. You know, Donald Trump wants to make you believe that sanctuary cities are, you know, are shielding violent criminals, and nothing could be further from the truth. You know, we will work with anybody to get violent criminals off of our streets, but we're not going to use our local authorities to either deny opportunities or to tear families apart.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you again for coming to the Jamaica Diaspora Show. And I wish you all the best.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you very much.
All right.
All right. Put it there.